Governor Howard Dean, Chair of the DNC, on the Young Turks.
Hello.
Hey, Governor Dean, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm excellent. All right, Governor Dean, let me start you with the most obvious question. You were right on Iraq. You were right on political fundraising through the Internet. You were right on the 50-state strategy. So how in the world do you expect to get another job in Washington?
Well, look, there's lots of interesting things to be done in the country. We still have huge health care problems. We've got a big education problem. I mean, people keep talking about fixing the schools. It doesn't do any good to fix the schools if kids coming into them aren't taken care of right. So that's something I'm really interested in, is early childhood, because I think that's the secret to both the prison problem and the education problems we're having in this country. So there's plenty to be done. Plenty to be done.
All right. So I know that this is a delicate tap dance for people involved in politics, and it's a hell of a business. You can't say you're interested in any jobs in the Obama administration. Now, I know you're not. But if Secretary of Education was available, would that be something that a person like yourself could be interested in?
Look, I think the best thing to do is to stick by my policy of never discussing transition under any circumstances. As they say in Washington, those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. And I'm doubly right on this one, because I don't know and I don't say.
All right, so I'm not going to press too hard on that. So let me ask you a slightly different question about your future, because, you know, I think a lot of people that listen to our show, a lot of people that read the blogs on the Internet, real progressives, care that people who are right wind up being part of the answer, right? So if for some reason you're not part of the Obama administration, which is very possible, anything could happen, right? And it's his picks to make, obviously. Is there something else that you would do in Washington so that your voice could be heard?
Well, look, no matter what happens, I'm going to be involved in the issues that I care about. And those are early childhood, and education and so forth. That is health care and health insurance. Having a universal health insurance program for every American is something I've got me into politics. And there are other things. I mean, the stuff I did when I was governor was mostly around those two things, plus environmental stuff. Conservation, land management issues, and then the other thing I did was my hallmark in the governorship was budget stuff, which obviously the president-elect has under excellent control. So, I don't know what I'll do, but whatever it is, I don't feel like I'm not going to be doing public policy of some kind. I am.
Yeah, all right. Now let's talk about your foreign position, or the one you're leaving right now. We're talking to Governor Howard Dean, who's leaving as the head of the DNC. You know, a name that hasn't been mentioned, I want to throw out there, and just because I probably don't know what I'm talking about, and you tell me why it makes sense or doesn't make sense. David Pluff ran an unbelievable campaign for Barack Obama, and as far as I know, he doesn't have a new job yet. Why wouldn't he be considered for head of DNC?
I'm sure that he could have it if he asked. I mean, the guy's the most unbelievable campaign manager probably in my lifetime. But he can make about 97 times more money. He just had a new baby, and he's probably pretty happy living in Chicago, I'd be guessing. So, I don't want to speak for David Pluff, but there's a lot of reasons somebody like that would not do it. And one is that he can make a fortune running other people's campaign based on what he did here. And I strongly suspect that, when the president-elect wants to run for re-election, that he's going to come knocking on David Pluff's door. So I think the DNC would be damn lucky to have David Pluff as chairman of the DNC, but I just can't imagine that somebody like that is going to do it. I got you. And so other names have been mentioned: Hildebrand, Claire McCaskill, maybe as a dual head. But you said that you're not in favor of it. I think both those people are great, and there are a bunch of other great people. Having two heads of this organization is a bad idea. It was tried in the Clinton administration. They had basically ended up with 8 chairs in 4 years. So the way this works is very simple, and nobody should think otherwise. The Democratic National Committee is run by the White House, period. When we have the White House, that's who it's run by. So, what I think probably ought to happen is they ought to have a very smart, qualified executive director that's going to be in daily contact with the political director of the White House. And then they need a chair who's good at raising money and willing to do a lot of traveling around the country and talking to donors and maintaining somewhat of a profile. An elected official, of course, would be terrific, but others, I'm sure there are others. Nobody's, to my knowledge, has discussed any names there in a serious way. So, but it's not for me to pick the next chair.
Sure.
There's plenty of talented people who could do a very good job. But I think having an organizational structure with two chairs, I think that has been proven to not work very well, especially if you had four sets of them in 8 years. I think that probably doesn't speak too well for arranging it that way. Because you really get a very conflicted chain of command. The chain of command is very clear. It goes from the White House to the executive director to run the DNC.
All right. Now, before I get into policy questions, Governor Dean, I did want to ask you one thing about the 50-state strategy. I mean, obviously, it's proven to be a tremendous success, and I'm not just saying that because I agree with it from the beginning, but the results are in. The proof is in the pudding. And there was wins, Colorado, New Mexico, just the West has been rebuilt in a Democratic direction, Montana in the earlier election, and the list goes on and on. So have people who were skeptical of the 50-state strategy, I'll pick a name out of the air here. How about Rahm Emanuel? Has he ever come up and said, hey, my bad, you were right about that?
I don't think that's Rahm's style, but Rahm is working for the guy who basically proved that the 50-state strategy worked. Barack Obama is the 50-state strategy candidate. He won in North Carolina. Even I didn't think we could win in North Carolina and Virginia right away. I thought it was going to take 2 cycles to do that. And he was able to make that happen because he was this incredible organization. So, I think that the 50-state strategy, because Barack Obama is elected, is here to stay. We picked up seats in 2006. We picked up seats in tons of places that went for George Bush in 2004. If you want somebody's vote, the first thing you got to do is ask. And we hadn't been doing that. And Barack Obama did do that, and that's why he won. He asked everybody for their vote, and he said, "I'm going to be the president of all the people, not just the half that agree with me." And I think he did that and succeeded in the campaign because of that. And B, I think that he's started out to be that kind of president. And I fully support what he's doing. I think it's really wonderful for the country, and it's why we're all in politics. Is if you can't be the president, which I couldn't, then you want to. The next best thing is to make sure that you're going to have a president like Barack Obama, who is going to do all these extraordinary things that he's done. And I think this is exactly the right guy for the time. Guy that doesn't lose his cool in a really difficult circumstance. A guy who's incredibly smart and is able to attract really, really good people around him. Anyway, for me, it's been a really gratifying 4 years. I didn't get to choose the candidate, of course, because I had to be neutral, but I'm incredibly proud that this country chose Barack Obama.
Governor Dean, a final note on that. I know this is a really touchy subject, but Rahm Emanuel was viewed by a lot of us as being wrong on that little battle you guys had on the 50-state strategy. And there's a new poll out showing that 94% of Republicans in Congress are happy with Rahm Emanuel, which gives me pause. So, is there anything that would...
This is a tough radio show here.
Okay. So, is there anything... is there a reason why we shouldn't be concerned, or should we look at Rahm Emanuel and say, all right, well, trust but verify?
Look, what I think is this. The President of the United States gets to name his staff. And he picked Rahm because Rahm knows how to get things done. And you've got to have somebody in your administration that knows how to get things done. It's great to have lofty ideals, but if you don't have somebody to implement it, then, you got a problem. And so, I don't know. I wasn't there in the room when President-elect made this decision, but my guess is that he wanted Rahm Emanuel because he knew that Rahm knew how to get stuff done. And let's just remember, it's the President of the United States that runs the country. So, I think, we ought to give this extraordinary candidate that we all work so hard to win, I think we ought to give him more than the benefit of the doubt. I know Barack Obama. He knows what he's doing, and I think he's made wise choices, and I think he'll continue to make wise choices. I'm not worried about that. Someday down the line, maybe there'll be some big ideological rift in the Democratic Party, but I don't think so. I think the new generation's message is let's work together and not have these fights that we've had for 30 years over these various issues. So let's get on the same page and make stuff happen. And I think that'll be the rule in the White House, and that rule will be set by the President of the United States.
We're talking to Governor Howard Dean, outgoing head of the Democratic National Committee. I want to ask you two quick policy questions. One's economic. This stimulus packages. Honestly, Governor Dean, I'm a little skeptical of them. Bush did a stimulus package. We all got a $600 check. And I don't really see what we got out of it other than an economic crash. And I know that's too simplistic a way of looking at it. But now we have a 500, a 600, a 700, and 800 billion. These are all four different packages coming at us. I don't know where we're getting this money, and I'm not sure that where it's going to be spent in a way that really helps the average American worker. Can you help assuage my concerns about that?
I can do the best I can with this one. This is obvious. First of all, I think a lot of the questions that you just raised, the answer is not known yet. So let me give you a few answers. First of all, not all of this money is real spent money on the balance sheet. For example, one of the things that was announced today was that assets were going to be bought from the banks, not toxic assets, but various mortgages and commercial mortgages and things like that. Now, I forgot what the price tag on that was, but I think it was about $300 billion. Maybe it was $500. That's not money that's going to we're going to make money off of that. We're buying that stuff from, I think we will. We're buying that stuff from the bank at, 60 or 70% of what it was worth. 30% of those mortgages are not going to default. This is not subprime mortgages. This is good stuff. It's just these guys need an infusion of capital, and in order for them to lend, they've got to have liquid assets. And mortgages aren't liquid. Well, the government doesn't need liquid assets, but the banks do. So my guess is we'll make money off of that, just like we made money out of bailing out Chrysler in the early 90s. The capital injection to the banks, we're probably going to make money off of that too, because in the long run, we're going to be shareholders in those banks. I don't think those banks are going to go broke, because I don't think the government's going to let them go broke, and I don't think those banks are going to be in the poorhouse for the rest of our natural-born lives. Now, the direct help to the homeowners. Well, you can say, isn't that money that's just going into deficit? Yes, but so is health care. So is Medicare. That directly benefits taxpayers who happen to be in danger of being put out of their homes. So these numbers are astronomical. These four packages with, I can't even remember how many hundreds is which, but let's just say it all adds up to 1.2 trillion, which is about what the number is. My guess is of that number, a much smaller percentage is actually at risk of being lost. Now, you're not going to get somebody coming out and giving you an estimate like that's in the government, because they don't know, and I don't know either. And they're not going to want to speculate. I don't mind speculating. But I think this is tough stuff. As a deficit hawk, I don't like it. But you cannot let the financial industry in the United States of America collapse, because if you do, you will have a depression. And I don't see what choice that we have going forward. We have to do, it's better to make a better to make a significant investment and take some risks than do what we know is going to happen if we don't do that, which is to have a collapse of the financial industry worldwide.
And finally, the foreign policy question. On Afghanistan, I've always been in favor of focusing on Afghanistan more, and so is Barack Obama. I was pleased to see that he pressed that issue. But some progressives feel that we might be making a similar mistake by increasing our troop levels there.
Well, look, let me just be very blunt about that. Again, I'm not speaking for Barack Obama or anybody else except for me when I say this. I, too, like you, have supported President-elect Obama's policy in Afghanistan, but it's deeper than just the roots of terrorism for me. And I also, like Barack Obama, don't believe that the long-term solution means an occupation of Afghanistan. Clearly, I think history shows that that's a mistake. But we have to stabilize Afghanistan. And let me tell you what's at stake. This is not a matter of Al-Qaeda. Some of it is. But this is a matter of whether women are going to be treated like they're in the 12th century or not. Women are, the way that the traditional Afghan society treats women is appalling. You can go out and kill your daughter if her husband, if she wants to divorce from her husband who's beating her up every day. That's sort of the norm under the Taliban and all this kind of stuff. I don't think that this society ought to enable that kind of stuff in any way. And people will say, oh, but you're imposing our values on people. Yeah, you're damn right I'm imposing values on people. I don't think that what Hitler was doing I don't think it was bad for us to impose our values on what Hitler did to Germany either. We believe in a pluralistic society. We believe that women have equal rights under the law everywhere. And yeah, there's a tolerance factor that we're going to cut people some slack for some differences. But the Taliban, that is not a civilized society. And I think we have a right and an obligation, if possible, to stand up for human rights everywhere in the world. And we're in the middle of Afghanistan, partly because the terrorists used Afghanistan as a staging ground for the attack on America 7 years ago. I think as we finish that business, and I agree with you, we can't finish it militarily, but we do need the military troops to stabilize it. We have to figure out how to get out of Afghanistan without turning women back into the victims of a 12th century society. And so there's much more to Afghanistan, in my view, than just Al-Qaeda. And in Iraq, it's so interesting, women were actually better off under Saddam Hussein. That was one of the things that I said in 2004, that Saddam Hussein was a secularist, that women frequently worked outside the home teaching and so forth. There were none of the prohibitions against women driving and having businesses as there are in Saudi Arabia. And now you begin to be concerned about whether, as we leave Iraq, that the role of women is going to be as equal as it was before we got there. So there's other things that drive me besides simply a calculus about the traditional things that America would be discussing in a Metternickian kind of analysis of the world. And I think women's rights are ones that are very important. And I know I'm going on a long time about this, but let me just leave you with this. Societies in the world that do well that don't have as many problems with literacy, that don't have as many problems with authoritarianism, that don't have as many problems with standard of living, that don't have as many problems with wars. Those are societies where women play an equal role. So it's in all of our best interest in the future of the stability of the world, not just to think about our immediate self-interest, but to think about the role of women everywhere in the world as we exercise our foreign policy, and that's particularly true of Afghanistan.
Governor Howard Dean, strong as always. Outgoing head of the DNC, thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks.
Thanks very much.